Every coffee needs a lotus.
Healthier and younger.
Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Miss. Okay, we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our FB Live viewers. Good afternoon to our participants. So it's a terrific Tuesday, as we usually say in Ariva Academy. I can still hear something. Yes. Meron pa tayong advertisement. But anyway, welcome to another e-learning session powered by Ariva Academy. My name is Irish Malonda Samson, and I'll be your host. With me joining is Mr. Howell Mabalot, my co-host and moderator. Sir Howell.
Hello, good afternoon, Madam Irish Malonda Samson, our beloved president. Nice to work with you again today.
Yes, thank you for being with us also. So our topic today is crisis communications, communicating with employees through a crisis. So later you'll got to meet our beautiful speaker. But before that, please allow me to greet our out of the country participant. She is Ms. Elma Reyes from Lalitpur, Nepal. So thank you for joining us today. And also, in order for us to have a smooth flow of our e-learning session, here are the house rules. Okay, for those of you who is their first time here in our webinar, please type in hi in the chat box now. So can I see? Can I see the participants now? Type in hi. Okay, there you go. For the others naman po, kindly greet your co-participants. Say hello, good afternoon. Okay, there you go. So to listen, you will be needing a good quality headset. So we wanted to know if you can hear us loud and clear, if we are audible. So use the following codes. So for 111 to show if you can hear us loud and clear. Okay. Okay then. And 222 means if you can hear us. 2121 means our sound is breaking up. And three question marks if you don't understand anything. Okay? So we will be having a 2 to 3 minute break after the presentation of our guest speaker and before we start the question and answer portion. For the question and answer guidelines, participants' microphones will be temporarily disabled by the administrator during discussion to avoid interruptions. Questions will be entertained after each topic of the session. For questions and clarifications during the provided time after each topic, please click the raise hand button for the administrator to enable the microphone for live questions. Type in your questions at the Q&A box below. Q&A box. One question at a time will be entertained. For comments and feedback, please scan this QR code. I'll give you time to scan this. This will be directed to our feedback form. So please send us your comments, suggestions, ideas, topics that you would want us to discuss for us to improve our future e-learning sessions. And now, to discuss crisis communications, communicating with employees through a crisis. Mr. Howell Mabalot, do the honors in introducing our guest speaker.
Thank you, Madam President. You know what? It's really a pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Madam President. Why? Because she has graduated with a bachelor's degree in communication arts from Miriam College and recently completed the Certified Event Specialist Diploma program at the School of Professional and Continuing Education of De La Salle College of St. Benilde. She has work experiences in TV and radio broadcasting and public relations, but majority of her career has been in learning and development for 14 years in the business process outsourcing industry, supporting Fortune 500 and Silicon Valley companies. She led training teams that supported the telecommunications and healthcare industries and also served as a training director in an organization with a head count of 18,000. Wow, 18,000 customer service and technical support staff. She established Little Rock Events in November 2019, but continues to serve as a learning and development consultant. So, everybody, let's all welcome Miss Vilo. Hello.
Hi.
Ayan, hello, Coach. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you very much, Howell. Nice
It's
to
a
see
ple-
you.
Nice to see you again. We rehearsed this program this morning. As of this moment, you will be taking the platform and the center stage.
Yep, will do. Very honored. Thank you very much, Howell.
Thank you.
All right. So it's nice to virtually. I can't technically say see because I can't see everybody, but it's nice to virtually meet everybody and be able to talk to people within this entire quarantine. I have a couple of expectations throughout this entire conversation. Number one, it's a conversation. It's a discussion. I don't intend to be the end all be all information gatherer and disseminator for throughout this entire presentation. If you have any other insights that you want to share or that you would like for us to share, we can be that channel for you. So you can drop that in the chat box or maybe through FB Live. I know that Irish is diligently monitoring our FB Live feed. I'm trying my best to go to and from Zoom and FB Live as well, but I don't want to make sure that I hamper the quality of the conversation that we'll have. Another piece of today is I want you guys to know that you can take notes and screenshots of the slides in front of you, but do take note that the video will be saved in Ariva's YouTube channel. So make sure that you subscribe and you follow the video there if you want a copy of it. However, a copy of the entire presentation could be available to you. You just have to reach out to Ariva as well. Last but not the least, I know that this is virtual training. This is a webinar, and it's very different for me not to have my audience in front of me reacting with genuine facial expressions. I don't know if you're laughing. I don't know if you're yawning, but I would really appreciate that you guys participate. When I ask you to chat something in the chat box, that would be great, because there will be some questions that I will be throwing at you guys later. Okay, so just to make sure that I'm coming off clearly and that everybody understands those expectations, please give me a hello or shout out hello to everybody in this entire webinar. Zoom is popping up with a lot of hellos. I'm getting hearts in Facebook Live. But it seems like the expectations have come across clearly. Thank you very much for your warmth, everybody. I'm hoping that before I even start, I'm hoping that everybody is safe and healthy in their homes. If not, and you're listening or watching this from a line at a grocery store, mag-ingat po tayong lahat. Please make sure to wash your hands. That has been my script for this entire quarantine. Now, let me go on to sharing my screen here so that we can get on with the show. So Howell already gave a really good introduction of my background, but I would like to let you guys know that this, although that it is called communicating with employees through a crisis, this is by no means a crisis communication training or seminar, or crisis communication planning seminar. There are so many facets to crisis communications, like learning how to create a crisis communication plan, knowing who your team is supposed to be in that crisis communication team, finding out what stage of a crisis you're in, how to create or how to facilitate a crisis assessment. So those are the things that we are not going to talk about today. But what I would like to make sure that you know that we're talking about is we are going to be talking about the experiences that we are having right now as either new or experienced leaders in this virtual or remote or distributed team scenario. And there's so many terms to it, but that's exactly what we're going through right now. So today we are witnessing new and experienced leaders shifting to remote ways to keep businesses running and simultaneously communicate with distributed teams. The distributed teams could be team members spread across an entire city, sometimes an entire island, sometimes, or more often than not. Right now, it could be spread across the entire country. Sometimes we even work with those who are working from a different country. So now more than ever, you have got to know that this experience is a defining moment for all of us. Gone are the days when we can just walk by somebody's station or somebody's desk and ask them how they're doing. Having these real conversations today becomes even more crucial. And that's what we're going to go through for the next hour. Now, you also need to know that I'm going to be providing a few crisis communication concepts that I have picked up and practices that you can use throughout any crisis, whether it's this one or, God forbid, there may be another one in the future. I hope not. But again, this webinar or the concepts that we're talking about here are timeless. You can use them. And the concepts that I'm talking about here have been gathered from so many different experts. I have been jumping on webinars, calls, conversations, emails with different kinds of experts. So I've been following crisis communication experts who I will quote later on within this discussion. So I've been following crisis communication experts. I have been also communicating with a professor of corporate communication and talking about these kinds of concepts, what to do. I have also, from the event planning industry, if any of you who are participants here who are into events or are event planners for your own companies, or you have your own establishments, I also learned that it's very clear to everybody that we all went back to the basics. No matter what the industry is, we're all going back to the basics of communication. Simply, if you compare it to what we're doing right now, we're also trying to learn how to properly wash our hands. And that's going back to the very basics as well. So some key learning points that we'll talk about. You will walk away understanding what the unstated narrative is, how it's defined, and how you'll be able to pull from it. We'll also talk about making the most of emotional contagion. This was the first time that I've ever heard about this kind of concept, and this is something that I truly want to share with you because it's very simple, but it's a really good refresher. And then we'll share some effective crisis communication techniques towards the latter part. All right. So let me start off with this. So this is something that I found in Facebook. during my downtime. So there are times when I have downtimes as well. And so I found this on Facebook and it resonated with me, and I'm pretty sure that it will resonate with all of you too. And it says here, I am not impressed by money, social status, or job title. I'm impressed by the way someone treats other human beings. And so I'm sure that a lot of you right now are experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing, where I am more, or not just me, but a lot of people are even more impressed by the way someone treats other human beings, regardless of what their income status is, regardless of whether or not they're a millionaire, they're a billionaire. What we're all looking at right now is how people are treating people, how humans are communicating with humans. And so I wanted to make sure that to share this, because you need to know that as a leader, what you do today will become your personal and your leadership brand, and it will ultimately shape your company's future. So I'm going to emphasize that a little bit later on. But remember, though, that from this point on, anything that you say, anything that you do, all actions that you make, anything that you communicate with anyone in your team, whether or not they're a coworker or somebody who reports to you, will establish your leadership brand, will establish and define and mold your personal brand. All right. Now, let's go back to the basics. I want to know, so I was talking about going back to the basics earlier, like right now we're all learning how to properly wash our hands. For me, to be honest, so I usually get cleaners to do deep cleaning at my house, which obviously I can no longer do. And so now I've gone back to YouTube to find out how in the world do I professionally do deep cleaning at my house? How in the world do I shampoo my carpet or my couch? And so on and so forth. And so going back to the basics as a leader also means that we need to go back to the basics of the communication model. So what I'd like to see in the chat box popping up right now and also in Facebook Live is, I want to ask you guys, what do you think are the parts of the basic model of communication? So it could be anything. Now remember, I'll give you one clue. It may have popped up during a minor subject in college, maybe, or sometime in your experiences in leadership development programs at the company that you work for, or you may have heard of it somewhere else. But remember that the basic model of communication starts off with a sender. So that's one part, that's one clue. But what else are other parts of the communication model? I'll give you guys about 30 seconds maybe, or a couple of seconds, just to write down whatever your answers are. And I'm seeing a bunch of good answers in the Zoom chat box. Ooh, somebody gave me a complete answer. And an acronym to boot. I'm seeing the same answers on Facebook Live. This is great. This means that a lot of you guys know what the basic model of communication is. I'm happy to see that. Some of you sent just one part. Some of you sent the entire thing, which is delightful to see. Some of you sent like the major parts of the entire basic model of communication. But what this is telling me right now that you guys are sending over to me is you guys have a really good overview of what the model is that we'll discuss in the next slide. So thank you very much for your participation. Now, let me walk you through what the basic model of communication is on this slide. Now, a lot of people, unfortunately, think that communication is easy, especially in this time of crisis. Sometimes what happens is, I've got some information that I want to share with you. I will share with you, and that's it. But it's not point A to B at all. There are so many things to consider. There are so many factors to consider. And so let's go back to this to review this communication model. For a lot of you, this could be a review. It seems like it's a review. For a lot of you, or for some of you, it may be something that we need to channel back to every now and then a little bit. Now, what happens here is, remember, we start off from the sender. So what the sender does is the sender puts in together information, ideas, or thoughts, and encodes them through pictures. It could be a song, it could be an email, it could be a direct message, it could be an animation, it could be any form. And so that, whatever that information is, all those thoughts, all those ideas are encoded into one format, and then it will be established as a message. Once that message is already done, you choose the channel, or the sender or the source will choose a channel to share that information on. So the channel could be so many different ways now. So I don't know about you guys, but when during my time in college, you can compute. I know that Howell told you guys what year I graduated, so you guys do the math. But so during my time, it was all traditional mass media channels. So it was TV, radio, and print. That's it. If there was any social media at all, I probably did not know about it, or I probably didn't really care. But now more than ever, there are so many ways to communicate a certain message. So just like this is a channel right now. This is a webinar. It could also be still traditional mass media means like TV, radio, and print. It could be a presentation. It could be a direct message. It could be a comment that you place on a post in Facebook. And so there are so many different channels. And once that message is already sent, then the receiver will try to decode. When you say decode, it's just another fancy word for interpreting. So the receiver will try to interpret whatever that message is. But before I go on any further, I want to make sure that you are aware of the two circles in that entire model. And so from the sender's point of view, remember that the sender or the source could be sending the message from the sender's field of experience, and the receiver might not understand what the sender's field of experience is because they've never been in that scenario. So I'll give you one example. I received one of the questions, one of the pre-sent questions to this webinar, and the question there was, how do I help the employees understand that even HR doesn't know what the answers are? And the answer there is they won't really understand unless they are in your shoes, unless they have experienced what you experienced, or unless they are right now experiencing it for themselves. They won't understand that unless there is a conversation that's going on, not comments in Facebook, not emails that could be misinterpreted, but real life heart-to-heart conversations. Virtual though, not face-to-face. If it's face-to-face, make sure that you wear your mask and you're 6 feet apart. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that you all are aware of those two circles. What it really means to me in layman's term is how I communicate it to you and how I receive the message that was given to me may not be the same way that you receive it. So everything is relative right now. It depends on your own experiences. It depends on the sender's experience, and it depends on the receiver's experience. But guess what? That doesn't even end there. There's so much noise in the background too. That red bar right across that model right there just tells you that there's a lot of noise that could distort your very good message. You mean well. Your intention is very good. But guess what? There's social media, there's fake news, there are perceptions of your neighbors that have been shared with you, and that has altered your perception of things. And so there are so many things that could distort a message that could ruin whatever that intention is. If we're lucky enough, we could get a response or some feedback from the receiver back to the source, and then it's a cycle on and on and on. The one thing that might not be seen clearly in this model, though, or is a little bit hidden, is that the two circles in the middle are overlapping. And so if you look at it, effective communication based on the basic model of communication means you have to find that common ground. You have to find some sort of shared understanding between the receiver, and if you're the sender, you have to find some shared understanding with the receiver. If you're the receiver of the message, you have to find that common ground and shared understanding from the sender or the source. right? So it goes both ways. I also want to share that communication is an art. Although there is a model in front of us, although there is a framework in front of us, when human emotions are involved, especially when we're all in stressful times, you can never tell how communication will pan out throughout entire conversation. And so don't think about or don't memorize this entire model and think about it this way, but use it as a guide, that not all of the messages that you are cascading to your employees could be as clear as you want it to be. Because again, baka iba yung nararanasan nila. Yeah. Okay. I'm hoping that I'm clear as crystal there. So let's move on to some of the ways for us to move from, or to ensure that we are finding that common ground or that shared understanding. Now, you need to, so this is a very difficult time for all of us. It's a very challenging time for leaders, whether or not you are a new leader or you're a tenured leader. Now, one thing that was made clear to me during one of the conversations that I've recently had with crisis communication experts is what we're all going through right now are the stages of grief. And I never understood it that way. To me, I was thinking, I'm just going through the notions of, do I have enough food? Do I have enough stock? Are my supplies enough? Do I have enough drinking water? And so on and so forth. But what I did not realize for myself personally, and maybe you guys will be able to relate with this, is that we're all going through the stages of grief. And so just as a review, the stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And without going through all of that, I'll give you one example of of something that I'm grieving about. So for those of you who are listening or watching right now and know me personally, there are some of you who know me that when I greet you in person, I'm a hugger. I'm a natural hugger. And so the social butterfly in me, I was telling Howell this earlier, I'm a social butterfly. I'm a natural social butterfly. And right now the quarantine has caged the social butterfly in me. I cannot hug people. When I get out of this quarantine, I can't hug people. Shaking hands might even be questionable, right? That might start happening. And so that's something that I'm grieving about, because that's my way of communicating, hey, I appreciate you. But now more than ever, a lot of the things I'm trying to adapt to are more verbal communication. I'm more of the nonverbal communicator. And so that's something that I'm grieving about. Maybe you guys might be going through some stages or a stage in a stage of grief as well, similar to me. You also need to remember that your people, your team, your folks at work, and everybody who you're working with may also be going through the different stages of grief. Maybe because, again, they're in denial that they can't get vitamin C. I can't find Berocca anywhere. I don't have vitamin C, so I stocked up on literal expensive orange juice only because I need my vitamin Cs. So know and keep in mind that, again, we're all going through different stages of grief, and that we all have different experiences. What you're experiencing right now could be entirely different from how somebody else is. So on to, enough of my blabbering, on to the 3 ways of empowering your team to move to a better state of mind. You need to help and empower. That's the operative term here. You need to empower your team to move to a better state of mind and convince them to keep moving and focusing on the right things. But you also need to remember that you are also dealing with this issue as well, one way or another. Don't forget yourself. And so the 3 ways, or 3 topics that we'll talk about to empower your team is, number 1, understanding the unstated narrative, making the most of emotional contagion, and also talking a little bit about effective communication techniques. So surprisingly, you will see that, or you will hear and observe that a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about are pretty basic and you probably already know it, but right now it's being magnified more than ever. And so what does understanding the unstated narrative mean? So think about it this way. Imagine that every single person has their own recording. It's like a tape recording. I don't know, dun sa mga medyo bata pa, if you know what tape recording is. I used to make mixtapes, but never mind. But everyone has their own recording, either digital or tape nga, of their perceptions of you as a leader, of you as a person, of your company, and of the world. So they already have their running perception. Remember, they have their experience in the basic model of communication. They're already experiencing what they're experiencing. And then they also have this preconceived notion of who you are as a leader and as a person of your company, and also running in the background is their perception of the world. Now, when people are in crisis mode, people have difficulty expressing their truths. They clam up, they quiet down. And I'm sure that you're nodding your heads right now because you either do that or sometimes you know people who do that. So when people are stressed out, when people are in crisis, they tend to quiet down and keep quiet and not really say what's really bothering them or what's running in their mind. So information, kahit na ikaw pa yung leader, even if you assert your authority on them, which is something that I don't recommend that you do during this time, is whatever they say to you will be filtered because they're in crisis mode right now. And what that means is that's the unstated narrative. Your job or your role as a leader is to peel away those layers to help find out what that unstated narrative is. What is it that they're not saying? It's not about what they are saying to you right now, but it's about what they're not saying. So understand what a person's motivation is. A person's motivation right now could be money, right? A person's motivation right now could be providing or getting enough supplies, food supplies for their entire household of 10 in a house or something. They could be motivated by fear right now, or they could be motivated by something else. And so from a communication standpoint, what you need to do is you need to unearth whatever those are, find out what those emotional triggers are. So how do you get to that narrative? You have to ask, and this is a very familiar concept to a lot of you, open-ended questions. And so open-ended questions are questions that are not answerable by yes or no. And so you have to ask specific and open-ended questions to peel away the layers and reveal emotional patterns, emotional triggers. One example that was given to me of how you can probably do this, let's say, for example, you have coaching, virtual coaching, or let's say you have a one-on-one with somebody who reports to you in your team. One question that you could ask them is, who was your hero growing up? And it seems to be such a general and generic question, but to be honest with you, if, for example, they give you the characteristics of whoever that hero is, that means that's what's important to them. And so you need to make sure that you're taking note, that you are consciously taking either mental or even written notes to make sure that you are finding out and recording what is important to them, because you can use this as a tool to start empathizing with them. So empathy in this crisis will play such a huge role. So again, to recap this entire slide, and I know that I only provided just a couple of things. This is just a summary of what I was talking about. But this is the core of it all. The kind of leader that is dialed into the people, that knows how to coordinate teams, whether it's across the country or across different geographies, and the kind of leader that brings out the best in people usually relies on empathy. And that empathy starts off with understanding that unstated narrative. And that unstated narrative, how will you find out what that is? You need to ask specific, open-ended questions. And when they answer, there should be no judgment. Because again, if we go back to the basic communication model, you have a different experience and your person has a different experience as well. Right? So I'm hoping that you got something out of that. Let's move on to the second one. Now, making the most of emotional contagion. What does this mean? So at first, when I heard about this, I thought that it was such a heavy topic. I didn't know. I mean, we're already dealing with a contagion in itself. People are watching the movie Contagion. What more is this? And so, what this really means is, you know how when you look at the definition, or when you look up the definition of contagion, it's spreading a disease, it's spreading bacteria, it's spreading something that's not good, right? And so making the most of emotional contagion is kind of flipping it and saying to the leader, you set the tone of how everybody else is going to feel in this entire crisis. And so that first paragraph right there rings true for many of you. The leader sets the tone, and how you feel affects how other people are going to feel around you, because how you feel is how you're going to manifest those emotions. That's how you're going to express those emotions. So if you're already stressed out and panicking inside, guess what? That's what you're going to be expressing to your people on the outside. That's what they're going to feel, and that's exactly what they're going to mirror, because guess what? You're the leader, right? Now, it's very easy. It's easier said than done, but leaders need to demonstrate calm. You become the default leader by projecting calm and confidence. And whenever you project calm and confidence, people would want to absorb that and be part of that. Now, where am I getting all of this? I got this tip from a crisis communication expert. His name is Chip Massey. He is part of an organization called When and How Agency. And he is a crisis communication expert with 21 years of work experience in the FBI. And so what he was sharing was, whenever there was like, let's say, for example, a kidnapping situation, and there was ransom. So let's say the parent needed to do a drop off or something like that. And I don't know what those terms are. I'm getting this from all the movies that I've watched. But let's say, for example, there's a drop off that needs to be done. He's the one that coaches the parent how to talk to the kidnappers on the phone. And what has worked time and time again is, whenever you're talking to somebody who is in a highly stressful situation like that, you need to make sure that you are controlling your pitch, your tone, and your cadence. So when I say your pitch, your tone, and your cadence, for the guys out there, and not the guys, but for everyone who has ever experienced anyone else being at the receiving end at somebody nagging you. So I'm pretty sure that you guys know how that sounds like. It's high pitched. They talk so loud. They talk very fast. You don't understand what in the world they're saying, right? And so when that happens and the pitch goes up, your body responds to that physically, and you get stressed out. And guess what happens to you? What happens to you is your vision becomes a little bit more limited, your hearing becomes a little bit more limited, and that's the reason why there's a breakdown in communication. So you need to make sure that, as the default leader, you need to make sure that your the pitch of your voice is lower, right? It has to be lower. You have to slow down when you're talking, not too slow to the point where people are going to sleep off or nod off, but you have to project that you have got this, right? I know that this could sound, again, easier said than done, but this has worked even for leaders in the corporate world. When people are ecstatic about something, excited about something, and you say, hey, take a breath, take a deep breath. Okay, let's talk about why you're excited. And so that's the time when you control it a couple of notches, and you make sure that you're trying to understand why somebody is either getting excited or stressful about an entire situation. When you project your calm, what happens psychologically too is the person that you're talking with or you're dealing with is going to say, ooh, we're in this stressful situation together. How come you are so calm and I'm not? Okay, I want to be like that too. And so they're going to dial into that calm as well, and they will move into a sense of ease that you've got this, right? Doing that will help them establish their trust in you. And so you need to make sure that, again, because the only thing that you can only control in this entire crisis, you can't control anything else but yourself. And so the only thing that you can control, again, is your pitch, your tone, and your cadence, and anything else that you do. All right. A lot of words for just a one slider, but let me move on to the next one. All right, and then let's move on to some effective crisis communication techniques. And this is a hodgepodge of all of the techniques that I have gathered from so many different experts during this entire, how long have we been in our houses? 5 weeks, 6 weeks? I don't know anymore. I don't know what day it is anymore. And so number one that they say, and again, this is coming from the When and How agency. Number one is when somebody goes off, vents, talks about their entire day, or sometimes when they chat with you, it's not even verbal communication, but sometimes when somebody just goes off in a chat room and starts enumerating and listing down the things that are stressing them out, what you want to do is you want to gather all of that information and summarize it and label it as just one emotion. So is it fear? Is it anger that you're feeling? Because once you help them summarize exactly how they feel, that's going to help somebody calm down. And when that person starts calming down, then they're going to say, okay, so now I acknowledge that I am angry. So what do I do to manage my anger? Okay, I'm going to go work it out. I'm going to go sweat it out. There could be so many different ways to work out that anger. It's all personal and it depends on them. But at least you're that instrument or that channel to help them understand what that emotion is for them. So what you call that is emotional labeling. In the world where there are no labels, or there should be no labels, the emotions have to be labeled so that you can help people. And then the next technique is using the 3 magic words in forensic listening. And this, I jumped up when I heard about this because I never knew that there was such a thing called forensic listening, and I never knew that there were the 3 magic words. And again, I got this from Chip Massey. And the 3 magic words, you have to use it to let the person know that you're listening. And it's so simple that I didn't realize it was actually there. So let's say, for example, they say, oh my God, my boss just yelled at me for no reason. So all that you need to do is to repeat the last 3 words that they said. And so the last 3 words that they said was, for no reason. And so when you ask them that, that's an open-ended question that you didn't realize that is already an open-ended question. And so that gives them the feeling that you're actually listening, that you're genuinely listening. But make sure, though, that your tone is genuine and that you authentically want to know that what they're talking about. So tricky. So it sounds simple, but remember, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. I can't stress this enough. Be mindful of your pitch, tone, and cadence all the time. If, for example, you lead a team of 100, and in my history, I used to lead a team of over 100 people. And chances are, when something comes up and there's a mission that we need to do, or there's a project that we need to complete, and I'm panicking, chances are my entire team is going to panic as well. So make sure that you're being mindful of what you can control so that they don't mirror that contagion, right? And then the last one, or not really the last one, I have a couple of other reminders, but I wanted to also open you up to another concept that was opened up to me, which is called the Fairness Fallacy. You need to help your entire team move out of the fairness fallacy. So what is the fairness fallacy? The fairness fallacy is the state where everybody, either in your organization, in your barangay, in your, in your entire team, in your group of friends, is talking about how incredibly unfair this entire situation is, how incredibly unfair a decision was, right? So this could resonate so much to those who are working in the corporate world, who they hear a lot of, but that's an unfair decision, but you didn't take you didn't listen to whatever we have to say, and so on and so forth. The fairness fallacy is a state where they are so focused on whether or not something was fair that they're stuck on not finding solutions. They're stuck on not problem solving. And so it's sort of like when this was said to me, I thought of Boy Abunda, only because what was said to me was the way to pull out your entire team out of the fairness fallacy is to put up that mirror. As in, literally, they say you have to put up that mirror and say, hey, look, this is what we're dealing with. These are the facts, right? This is what we were told to do by this is what we were told to do by the Department of Health. This is what we were asked to do by so on and so on and so forth. It's difficult for a leader to be the one to break the bad news, but you have to be able to zoom out to see the bigger picture and then help everybody execute what needs to be executed. Because once they start moving towards that solution, chances are they will start getting out of that fairness fallacy. So be careful, or not be careful, but be aware and be cognizant of team members who are always critical and saying that either a decision or an action was not fair, because you want to get them moving into a solution-oriented environment, right? Just a few things to keep in mind before I even move on. A quick note when about the human behavior when we're in a crisis, when we're under stress. This is not foreign to anybody at all. I bet when we're under stress, the worst comes out of anybody. Hindi tayo perfectong tao, and so the human body adapts so differently when we're under absolute stress. So I got questions earlier that I noted down that asked, how do we deal with people who have an attitude during this time? Hey, guess what? Maybe they don't have an attitude. Maybe it's turning your perception around to see that it might not be an attitude at all. They don't mean to do that, but it comes out because, again, we're all in a crisis mode, right? Maybe the unstated narrative there is, I fear that I'm going to lose my job because I don't have a PC to work on. I don't have internet either. And so how can I provide for myself? How can I provide for my family? And so on and so forth. And so be sensitive, because a lot of people are going through a lot of things that we don't know about. And as leaders, it's our job to be able to peel away those layers and discover what they are. And also remember that human behavior alters when it's under stress, and higher thinking is no longer there, because then it's the fight or flight mode. It's survival mode. And that's the reason why so many people went panic buying when the quarantine was first announced, right? Because literally, if we go back to, ang dami ko sinasabing concepts, but they're all starting to fly in. But if you review Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so physiological need is the most basic. That's food, shelter, clothing. And then right after that is security. And guess what? Those two are not met right now. For those of you who are fortunate enough who have all of that, great. But there are people within our organizations and people who we may know who are not even talking about it, but they fear that. So let's probably step back a little bit. When we know that somebody is acting up, then that becomes your cue. This person is acting up. There's probably something bothering them. That's when you pick up the phone and you ask them, hey, how are you doing? And have that one-on-one time with them. If there was one technique that I got from all of these experts, and again, these are different industries: corporate communications, crisis communications experts, event planning industry, BPO industry. There's so many industries that just said one thing. And the one thing was, you need to make sure that you are having real conversations with people. It's not, I have a message that comes from management or that comes from leadership, I will communicate it to you right now. Sometimes, or more often than not, especially in this crisis, because it means so differently to all of us, you need to have those one-on-ones. I'm not asking somebody from HR to start calling each of these people one by one, but use whoever your resources are, like your frontline supervisors or your team leaders, and guide them to have these one-on-ones and these real-time conversations with their people so that they find out what the unstated narratives are. And so that people will also feel like, hey, I felt that they really truly care about me. They ask me how I'm doing. I'm being very conscious of my time. And so let's move on to the next slide. So some reminders for all of you. And these are some reminders that I got from, some of them, I'll let you know where I got them. But the first three are from Simon Sinek, from a webinar that he has been hosting. It's a book review of one of his books, Start with a Why. And the first thing, and what he did in that webinar, check it out if you have time, because I'm learning a whole lot. What he does is he asks a bunch of questions, and these are some of the things that I got from him. Number one, during this entire time, being alone and lonely are not the same thing. Let me repeat that for emphasis. Being alone and lonely are not the same thing. So being alone physically is just you in a room or in a house or something. But a leader tries to ensure that all of his people do not feel lonely by picking up the phone and checking on them. So let them talk. He calls, it comes in different terms, but I always call it manage by walking. And so what I do most of the time is I get off of my laptop and then I just go around asking people how they really are. And it's not like your usual na, usually pag kamusta yung tinanong mo, yung kamusta natin, equivalent yan sa hi, hello, tapos biglang aalis na, di ba? But literally just stop there and ask how they're doing. Now, we can't even do that. We can't even comfort people when they feel sad, lonely, or they're feeling anxious about something. We can't hug them anymore. It's not something to do these days. And so now more than ever, the only thing that we can do is to either pick up the phone, or so kung hindi man landline or mobile phone yan, do a video call with them. It's even more powerful to see how sincere you are in asking how they're doing. And let them talk. So when you ask, how are you? Again, that's an open-ended question. And you will get a loaded answer. I'm hoping that they trust you enough to give you a loaded answer. The second thing to keep in mind is that lack of communication, miscommunication, and lack of cooperation and coordination among leaders breeds uncertainty. So kung may kulang man dun sa communication, or if communication is not proactive enough, it breeds uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds fear and paranoia. And that's one of the reasons why I will take this opportunity to let you know just 4 things that I got from a professor of corporate communication from Dartmouth. He said that to communicate with your people during this crisis, number one, you need to make sure that you post information regularly in a highly visible location. So it could be social media, it could be like a Facebook group chat, it could be something, it could be an intranet, it could be so many different channels. But you always have to post information regularly and in a highly visible location. What he actually said was no less than every other day. Pero baka naman overload na ng information yun. So depende sa inyo if it really depends on you. You guys know your people better, and you will know better when to communicate or not. The second thing that he says is you also strive to describe how decisions were made. Because then when instead of trying to shove a decision down everyone else's throats, you explain why that decision came about, how that decision was made. Because when they find out what the why is, then chances are they are going to buy into it, right? Not all people will buy into it, but little by little. Third thing that he says to do is to communicate no less than every other day. But again, that really depends on your organization, and you know your people better. And then the last thing that he says to do is try to provide timely information rather than waiting until you know all the answers, which is the perfect segue to the third bullet to keep in mind. Perfectionism will slow you down in a crisis. Waiting for the perfect information will breed uncertainty, and it will breed fear and paranoia. So it's okay to communicate what you only know right now. You don't have to have all the answers. It's all right. And then a tip that I got was to develop mental agility and act with selflessness and compassion when you are communicating during a time of crisis, because leaders tend to be challenged by three things. In a crisis, they're challenged by distractions, they're challenged by their own ego, and they're challenged by empathy. What does this mean? Leaders are challenged by distractions because what ends up happening is there's so much information. I don't know what to communicate anymore. And as a leader, you need to learn how to toggle between zooming out to get all of that information, get the big picture, and then you zoom back in to guide the execution of the short-term actions that you need to do within your own organization. Another challenge is that leaders come across in a crisis is their ego. And some of you might admit, some of you might not, some of you might resonate, and that's okay. So the ego kasi, it plays a huge part because we're driven to succeed, and we have been successful in our roles thus far. But guess what? In comes this crisis. We don't know what to do, and that brings out a lot of doubt in yourself, that you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you don't know how you're going to communicate it with your people. And so chances are you're going to go back to how it was done before. But remember though, and how it's going to work for you. But this is the time. This is the time to be selfless, to make sure that you are aligning yourself with the company mission and not your own mission. And then another challenge is empathy. Empathy is a challenge for leaders because on a kind of like the other side of empathy, while it's good, it could be bad too, because what if it delays you from making a critical business decision because you don't want to hurt people? I saw the word layoff in some of the questions, and so there are some critical business decisions that need to be made because there's no other way. But what you can do to make sure that you're making that decision swiftly is to battle it with compassion. So let's say, for example, and I'm hoping that this doesn't have to happen to any of you, but let's say, for example, that a layoff does happen, or there was a question that was asked, how do you communicate with your employee that there are no more clients, there's no more money coming in, and that there's no more job? And my answer to that is, why are you limiting yourself? Why would you limit yourself to what you can do within the organization? You're a human being, you are a person. And the one thing that compassion asks you to do and to make a habit of is asking yourself, how can I be of benefit to this person? So I may not have those jobs available for this person. I might not have the business running anymore, but it does not going to stop me from helping this person find another job elsewhere. This is where we have no more boundaries anymore. People are now sharing lists of employees who were laid off to different companies, to even competitors, to make sure that they get the jobs that they need to survive. And so don't limit yourself. But you always have to ask yourself, how can I be of benefit to this person? And then the next reminder is, and this was great for me, and again, this came from Simon Sinek, look for leadership, but also look for followership. If the leader's idea doesn't work, avoid saying, I told you so. Get to work and execute a new idea to achieve the same goal. So what you want to do is, you want to own it. You have to have your sense of ownership. Now, if you don't agree with your leader's idea right now, maybe he or she has that information that you don't have access to, and that could be the best decision so far. But what you want to do is you're all on the same boat together, and so you want to achieve the same thing. And so what you want to do is you want to find out, how else can I back my organization up, my team up, to get to the same goal in case this initial plan does not work out. And so that's what's helping a lot of people these days. So instead of just relying on other people for their survival, they're finding ways for that survival. Last but not the least of my reminders, and I always say this to everybody I know, don't forget to take care of yourself, because you can never ever pour from an empty cup. There are so many ways that you can take care of yourself. I recently read up on it. This time has been very enriching for me because I've been reading up a lot. And they say that even walking at least 4,000 steps a day could improve your cognitive skills. And so walking, exercising, a lot of people, there are so many free workouts online right now that used to be very expensive, and now they're for free. And remember the science behind it. You work out and you exercise because you want to make sure that your brain produces endorphins. Endorphins make you happy, right? I'm not saying that you have to be happy, that you have to battle this with happiness. But what I'm saying though is, when you're in that state of mind where it's a lot better, then you can be more solution oriented and you can be more problem solving than fearing what is uncertain, right? And so I want to make sure that you walk away with a message. And so a message for each of you. So right now, I know that I can't see you. You can't see, well, you probably can't see me, but I'd like for you to choose a gadget. And I am not giving away gadgets at all. Let's make that clear. I am not giving away gadgets, but I want you to choose a gadget. And whatever gadget you choose, I will have a message for you that I will show you in a little bit. So you can choose from left to right. You can either choose the desktop PC. The second one is a laptop. The third one is a tablet. And the fourth one is a mobile phone. So which one of these would you choose? So you can either type that in the chat box, either in Facebook Live or in Zoom. Or you can just keep it to yourself, or tell your dog right next to you, share it with your dog right next to you. And I want to leave you with one message before we go to the Q&A. So if you've already chosen what your gadget is, if you chose the desktop PC, your message for today is, your courage is greater than any fear. Be brave. You got this. And if you chose the laptop, for those of you who chose the laptop, if opportunity does not knock, build a door. It might be a wall, then build a door, hammer it down, right? The third option was a tablet. So if you chose the tablet, your message is, do something today that your future self will thank you for. Now, I have nothing against anybody who does TikTok. If that makes you happy, great. I'm glad that it makes you happy, right? And if it helps you become successful in the future, if doing that right now will help you become successful in the future, wonderful, right? Baka mamaya may mga budding artists and celebrities tayo in this webinar, right? And then if you chose the mobile phone, your message is, make yourself a priority. At the end of the day, you are your longest commitment. And don't forget that. So I know that I went rambling for an entire hour. So before we go to Q&A, I want to make sure that I tell you guys to stay safe, strong, and healthy. In case you want to get in touch with me personally, I left my email address there as well.
Thank you so much, Coach Vilo. On the contrary, you didn't just ramble. You were magnificent.
Thank you.
You really are a great communicator. You are not a training director for nothing. You did well. You communicate with your heart, and the most important thing is you spoke from your experience.
Thank you.
And that's
very
the
much.
most important thing. That's you made this program relatable. Mm-hmm. And with that, can we all give Coach Roch a big round of applause, please? Yes, clap, clap, clap. Ayan.
Thank you, Howell.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you for your generosity.
Thank
And
you.
everybody in this room knows, everybody in this chat box, everybody in this webinar know that they all know that this is for free. And you have allotted generously your time. You've shared with us your knowledge, your experience, and you were compassionate enough to generously let us know that there are 4 messages for the people with with a desktop, a laptop, an iPad, and an iPhone.
Mhm.
So now, magnificent, and we are being flooded with gratitude and questions as of this moment.
I bet.
Aside from the pre-sent questions, but before we go on a 2-minute break, would like to ask you to please stand by if it's okay with you
Sure, of course.
for our 2-minute break, and would like to greet the sole birthday celebrant today, daughter of well, let's just call her Zandria Keith Bautista, daughter of Perna. Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday. Wala yung music natin ng happy birthday. Happy birthday. So thank you so much. When we return after 2 minutes, Coach Roch, this is what will happen.
Mhm.
I will be reminding them of the question guidelines. We'll be acknowledging the local participants, and we'll start with the Q&A.
Okay, awesome.
Beautiful inside and out. Thank you,
Thank you, Howell.
Coach Roch.
See you in a bit.
And everybody, don't go away. We'll be right back. We promise that.